Well, folks, we all know that MAGA is all about ducking and dodging any and all accountability. And that's funny to me because back when I was growing up, they at least preached, the Republicans did, that they were the party of morals and values, and they were all about pulling yourself up by your bootstraps and taking responsibility for your own actions. They have threw all of that out the window, and they're just going for it now, just being their true disgusting selves. And they will sit back and spin a narrative any way they see fit in order to avoid any responsibility. But this next story I'm about to share to you, if they were putting their hypocrisy and their disgust up on public display at the county fair, this one would take the blue ribbon. I can't believe that I'm reading this out loud in 2025, and I've said that several times, and we're not even 2 months in here to 2025, but these stories just keep breaking, and they just keep getting more outlandish and more ridiculous by the minute. So I'm going to break this one down, and we're going to react to it in real time. And if you haven't already, be sure and hit that like button, hit subscribe. Get in on this conversation if you want to. Leave a blue heart after it's over to let me know you're okay, because this is one of the most ridiculous stories that I've ever read. It comes to you from the Herald. Fort Mill Church claimed religious freedom in sex abuse lawsuits. South Carolina judge says no. Think about this. A church claimed religious freedom in a sex abuse lawsuit. Oh, a South Carolina judge has denied Morning Star Fellowship Church's claims for religious freedom immunity in lawsuits over sexual abuse of boys by a former church volunteer. That means 3 lawsuits will go forward against the Fort Mill Church and some of its officials after volunteer Erickson Lee sexually assaulted boys in a Morning Star youth group. Convicted last year for his crimes, Lee gave them alcohol and showed them pornography. Morning Star claimed in court, get this, they claimed in court and documents the separation of church and state under the Constitution, called ecclesiastical privilege of doctrine, bars government intervention into freedom of religion. But thankfully, Judge Martha Rivers disagreed, saying in Thursday's order, sex assaults are not ecclesiastical doctrine, and Morning Star has no religious freedom immunity privilege. I'm going to stop right there just for a second. How many times have I said here on the channel that when Donald Trump says, I have to have immunity to do my job, I've pointed out that that wouldn't work anywhere else. But what we're seeing is that they're now trying to adopt his philosophy. You're going to hear more and more people say this. We should have immunity. We shouldn't be held accountable for this. And to think that someone would first of all twist and pervert the Bible and prey on children, and then sit back and try to twist the Constitution to avoid any accountability or responsibility, it's absolutely sickening to me. But let's keep reading here. This is, I believe this is the judge here talking. So South Carolina courts do not inherently reject jurisdiction over church-related claims and will not extend the First Amendment protection to secular activities that happen to take place under the church's roof, she said. The court finds the ecclesiastical doctrine does not bar claims after alleging defendants facilitated and overlooked sexual assaults of a teenage boy. Morning Star is a large non-denominational church in York County near the North Carolina state line. It has hundreds of members, run by Morning Star University and a K-12 school, according to the website. Lee, a police officer in Cornelius, North Carolina, at the time of the crimes from 2020 to 2023, was found guilty of sex assaults on 4 boys last year. He's serving 9 years. That's not near enough. He's serving 9 years in prison after pleading guilty to the sex crimes, assault and battery, decimating obscene material, and contributing to the delinquency of a minor. Around the time that Lee pled guilty, the family sued Morning Star church founder and CEO Rick Joyner, Lee, and others last year. The suits seek compensatory and punitive damages for negligence, conspiracy, emotional anguish, and distress from alleged outrageous conduct of the defendants. The lawsuits are separate from the criminal case that was solely against Lee. The Herald was the first to report Lee's conviction, the lawsuits by the victims against Morning Star, and the church's claims of immunity. So the victim's lawyer cases move forward. Rock Hill lawyer Randy Hood, along with Chad McGowan, represent all 3 victim families, has said in court documents and in a court hearing, Morning Star and some leaders were negligent about Lee's abuse. and they conspired to cover it up. Again, how many times have we heard the story, and we always hear them go on and on and on about drag queens, and no one can bring up one story of a drag queen ever harming anyone. They're worried about drag queens reading books. This has clearly been an ongoing problem for years and years and years, and it's always the same thing. They always try to sweep it under the rug, and now, in the lowest down fashion they could possibly do, they're trying to claim immunity. Where did they learn that from? So the ruling means the victim suing Morningstar can now seek information from the church and its officials, Hood said. We trust the judicial process and the law established in South Carolina to allow us to move forward with this serious case affecting many. We look forward to the discovery process where we will get to put people under oath and obtain testimony on a number of disturbing issues. So now Morningstar denies wrongdoing and cover-up. Morningstar and Joyner have denied any negligence, wrongdoing, or a cover-up in court documents and statements to the Herald since the lawsuits were filed in August and September of 2024. They had asked for the lawsuits to be dismissed. The church told the Herald in a statement on September 16, 2024, now get this is their statement. When the ministry first got information that Officer Lee may have provided alcohol to these young men, he was immediately relieved as a volunteer. At the time, we were unaware of any sexual misconduct by Officer Lee. Several weeks later, as soon as the allegations surfaced of sexual misconduct perpetrated by Officer Lee, we notified law enforcement immediately. To be clear, any notion that Morningstar knew about or covered up any misconduct by Officer Lee or any sexual criminal conduct by anyone associated with the ministry is false. Now, it is unclear if Morningstar will appeal Judge Rivers' ruling. Efforts to reach Don Brown and Matthew Gerald, the two lawyers who represented the church, and its leaders in court in December and in the lawsuits were unsuccessful by phone and by email on Friday. So, of course, they have denied any cover-up or any wrongdoing, but you're going to ask for immunity? And again, where have we heard that? We're going to hear more and more of this because this is now the Republican Party that Donald Trump has rebranded them and completely reshaped them. And so I don't see how that they could ever come back from Donald Trump. I don't see how they'll ever be able to put the toothpaste back in the tube and make anyone believe that they were ever about morals and values. And I want to go ahead and say this. I never bought into that. I was a kid in the 80s and I learned about the moral majority as I grew up. I never bought into that shit. I always knew that it was all just a front and all just a cover up for who they really were. So I've never been a fan of Ronald Reagan. I've never been a fan of Jerry Falwell or Pat Robertson or any of the people that claim to be the moral majority. That was just another catchphrase before they finally came out loud and said they were MAGA. But the one thing that, I've really debated on a lot, because what you got to understand about my channel and the way that I go about doing content is this is just a stream of consciousness. I just sit down here every day and I think out loud with y'all, and I sit back and try to figure things out for myself. So as I'm trying to figure these things out and we're trying to figure them out together and go forward, sometimes I say things and then a listener might reach out and point something out, or I might be sitting around having a beer with a friend and they may point something out that I never thought of. But the one thing that I said for a long time was, this ain't the Republican Party that I remember as a kid. This ain't the Republican Party of my grandfathers. This isn't what they were about. Well, I know my grandfathers wouldn't be about this bullshit, but sometimes I sit and say to myself, has this been the Republican Party all along? Has this always been them? Because I always thought they were hypocrites. I always thought they were full of shit. I just never thought that they would take it to this extreme. I never thought that they would go this far to try to duck accountability. You would think it's always the same thing. It's always they're borrowing from Trump in every one of these scenarios. It's always the fake news media is out to get us and tear us down and destroy our lives. And they turn a blind eye to all the lives that they truly have destroyed. And they sit and they distract people by talking about drag queens. It's some of the most frustrating stuff to combat, because when you're combating someone who takes accountability off the table and then tries to say that everything is rigged against them, you can never get ahead in these arguments. And that's why that I don't sit here. You're not going to see me going on shows and sitting down and having a screaming match with somebody. I'm not interested in that at all. I'm not interested in having somebody scream across the table at me or scream at me on a panel and try to own me in a moment they can put on YouTube and claim they done something. That's not the kind of conversations we need to have. We need to have conversations where people reflect. And I know that our side can at least do that. We may not be perfect. We may not always get it right. And when we don't get it right, we admit it. I recently got something wrong in a video, came out and made a correction video, pull the old video down. That's what we do. We take responsibility. We take accountability. They don't. If I had been like MAGA when that happened, I would have just said, well, a lot of people believe it. I mean, a lot of people are talking about it. There's a lot of people feels this way. But that's not how we play. That's not who we are. And it's amazing to me just how far the Republican Party has fallen. But then again, maybe this was them all along. I mean, maybe they just finally figured out a way to duck and dodge better. Maybe they've always been these hypocrites. It's discouraging because when I was growing up, I just thought better of people. But hearing stories like this and seeing the people roll with it, that's the thing for me. Seeing the ministers that raised me and baptized me, seeing them roll with this garbage, I don't feel any shame or guilt for not returning back to their churches at all. And if there's something on the other side, I know I say I'm agnostic, but I've had people say, what are you going to do if you get over there? It's real, buddy. Well, I'm going to stand back and be entertained because I have a feeling there's going to be a lot of people that's going to be disappointed when they face judgment.